The sky was too blue. That was Eli Mercer's first thought as he stepped off the train and into his hometown for the first time in 6 years. After 3 tours in the desert, the colors here felt unreal, oversaturated, almost mocking. His mother cried as she hugged him, and his younger brother tried a joke that didn't quite land. Everyone welcomed him back like a hero. But Eli didn't feel like one. He didn't feel much of anything. The streets were the same, the old corner shop still smelled like frying oil, and his childhood bedroom hadn't changed. But Eli moved through it all like a ghost. Civilians spoke too fast. The air was too soft. He couldn't sleep. The night was too quiet, but every sound still made him flinch: a car door slamming, a dog barking, the click of the kitchen clock. Old friends invited him for drinks. He went. They talked about jobs and football, about things that now felt impossibly far away. Eli smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. When one of them asked if it had been bad over there, Eli shrugged. It was what it was, he said. The conversation shifted. No one pushed. No one really wanted the answer. He tried routines, mowing the lawn, fixing the fence, helping his mother with groceries. But his hands trembled when he passed the butcher's counter: red meat, too raw, too familiar. He couldn't stand in long lines. The sound of a helicopter overhead made him drop to his knees. He told himself it was just adjustment. Everyone said it would take time. At night, he dreamed in sand and sirens. Flashbacks played like broken film reels, a child crying behind rubble, the pressure of a trigger under his finger, the aftermath of an ambush. He woke up drenched in sweat, fists clenched around his blanket. Once, he caught himself standing in the backyard in the dark, barefoot, gunless, heart pounding as if he were back on patrol. His mother tried. She left tea by his door. She folded his laundry. She didn't ask questions. But the gap between them was wide and silent. She didn't understand, and Eli didn't have the words. He visited the war memorial one afternoon, hoping it might make something click. Instead, he stared at the names of the dead and wondered if he should have been among them. Survivors guilted themselves in quiet ways. Eli carried his in the stiffness of his shoulders and the silence of his grief. The war was over. But inside Eli it hadn't ended. It had just come home with him. Eli started keeping the curtains drawn. The sunlight hurt his eyes, not because it was bright, but because it felt like a lie. Every day passed in static. He avoided town, the local shops, the park, anything that made him feel visible. Noise sent his nerves into a spiral. The hum of lawnmowers, the pop of tires on gravel, the buzz of the fridge motor ticking on at night. Each sound triggered a buried instinct to duck, to scan, to brace. His brother noticed. So did his mother. But neither knew how to help. At dinner, Eli barely ate. When asked what he was thinking, he gave the same answer each time: nothing. But inside, everything was too much. He couldn't sleep. And when he did, he woke to the echo of gunfire that wasn't there. He tried to ignore it, to muscle through it. That's what he'd been taught: stay strong, push on. But war had rewired him, and now even silence was its own kind of battlefield. It all came to a head at the town's spring festival. Families gathered at the river. Children played games. A man lit fireworks early by mistake. The sharp crack tore through the air. Eli dropped instantly flat to the ground, hands over his head, breath heaving. His eyes searched for sand, for cover, for a voice shouting orders. But there was only the sound of laughter turning into concern. Someone helped him up. He didn't know who. His ears rang. His vision tunneled. People stared. He left without a word. Dr. Lena Wu was waiting at the community center the following week. She ran the veterans group. Eli had ignored twice already. She wore no uniform. She didn't talk like a bureaucrat. When she found Eli sitting alone by the war memorial days later, she didn't ask about the war. She asked about sleep. Their first session was tense. He sat rigid. She asked soft questions. He gave hard answers. You ever feel angry? Only when I'm awake. What keeps you up? Nothing worth sharing. Still, she didn't push. And when she finally said, What you're feeling is valid. Eli nearly laughed. Valid. Like his guilt had paperwork. But something shifted. He agreed to come again. The nightmares worsened. More vivid. More real. One placed him back in the convoy just before the IED. Another in the medical tent, holding a friend's wrist as the life slipped away. Some mornings, he didn't speak at all. Just walked for hours. But the images stayed with him now, even in daylight. He started sketching at first just lines, then shapes, faces, scenes. Lena encouraged it. Draw what you can't say, she said. So he did. Because war had taken his words. But maybe, just maybe, it hadn't taken everything. Eli began his mornings with charcoal-stained fingers. What started as erratic sketches had turned into full-blown painting canvases torn from old curtains, smeared with violence and void. He didn't paint to impress. He painted to remember, to release. Each piece came from a place he hadn't dared speak aloud, the heat of the desert, the roar of an explosion, the haunted eyes of a friend who didn't make it back. Lena said it was progress. She didn't call it healing, she knew better. This isn't about moving on, she said. It's about moving through. Eli didn't answer, but the next session he brought one of his pieces. It showed a soldier with no face, standing in a street painted red. Lena didn't ask who it was. She only said, "Tell me about the red." That was the day Eli spoke Callum's name. Callum had been Eli's shadow through 3 tours, loud, kind, a master at finding music in the middle of nowhere. Callum cracked jokes before raids. He sent Eli his favorite songs through the comms on night watch. Keep you human, he'd say. But in the end, humanity hadn't saved him. An ambush. A minute too late. Eli remembered freezing, unsure whether to fire, afraid of hitting civilians. In that moment of hesitation, Callum took the bullet. Eli had crawled to him, pressed his hands to the wound, whispered every lie he could think of. Help was coming. It wasn't that bad, he'd be okay. Callum died anyway. Eli stopped talking after that, for days. The guilt was heavy in his throat. He painted a canvas entirely black. Lena called it moral injury, a violation of who you believed you were. It's not just that you saw death, she said. It's that you feel responsible for it. Eli nodded. You're not, she said. But I know that doesn't make it easier. The youth center asked him to teach self-defense. He almost said no, but Lena nudged him. You can show them what strength really looks like. So he went. The first class was awkward. The kids laughed, teased, didn't listen. Then Eli shared part of his story, not the blood, just the burden. And they listened. Something softened in him. He started spending time there more often, fixing gear, giving quiet advice. Watching the world not just move, but rebuild. Not with noise, with intention. He painted again. This time a man standing knee-deep in floodwater, holding a lantern. This one's you, Lena said. Eli didn't disagree. Callum's memory still visited him, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in the quiet between words. But now Eli met those memories with breath, with art, with the knowledge that his pain didn't make him broken. It made him human. And being human finally started to feel survivable. Eli no longer braced when doors closed. The clench in his shoulders, once automatic, had begun to ease, slowly, unevenly, like a tide receding in uncertain patterns. He found rhythm in the youth center, showing teenagers how to hold their ground, how to breathe before reacting. Some were rowdy, angry at things they couldn't name. Eli saw himself in them, not the soldier, but the boy before the war. The one who believed in control. He said little, but the kids listened when he did. Especially when he told them, quietly, that fear isn't weakness. That freezing up didn't make you a coward. That surviving sometimes meant doing nothing but holding on. He painted in the mornings, before the town woke. His latest work was of a soldier kneeling not in defeat, but in prayer. No weapons, just open hands. Lena called it acceptance. Eli didn't name it. He just painted what he couldn't say. The nightmares still came. less often. But when they did, he was ready. He'd journal in their aftermath, trace the images with ink and breath, letting them bleed onto the page until they no longer felt sharp. It wasn't erasure, it was release. One quiet Tuesday, Eli drove to the military cemetery outside town. He hadn't been there since the funeral. The weather was kind clouded, cool, no one else around. He found Callum's name on the white stone. It looked too clean, too final. Eli sat. He didn't speak for a long time, then he said what he'd wanted to say for years. I froze. I didn't move. I let you die. And then, softer, I didn't know how to keep going. But I did. I'm trying to do it right now. I hope that's enough. He left a painting beside the grave. It was of two figures under a night sky. One had a guitar. The other had a rifle. Both looked like shadows. That night, back in town, he joined the Veterans Support Circle for the first time as a speaker. He didn't prepare anything, just walked in, nodded, and began with, I don't have answers. But I've got pieces. And I think that's something. Afterward, a man who hadn't spoken in 3 sessions shook his hand. At home, Eli sat on the porch. The stars were visible tonight. Not perfect, but clear. Somewhere across the street, a neighbor laughed. He didn't flinch. He smiled. Because quiet was no longer the enemy. It was becoming a friend. 1 year later, the man who came back from war was still there, but he no longer defined Eli Mercer. He lived above an art gallery now, where 3 of his paintings hung in the window. They weren't masterpieces, but they were honest. One showed a soldier with a bird perched on his helmet. Another a cracked mirror held together by string, and the third a sunrise behind a wire fence. Visitors often stopped to stare. Some asked about them. Some walked in silence. Eli didn't always explain. Sometimes the silence was the answer. He taught 2 nights a week at the youth center, martial arts and self-discipline. Yes, but also reflection. You don't win by hurting, he told one restless teen. You win by learning when not to swing. The kids called him coaches, and the name stuck. It felt strange, but good. Grounding. Therapy still continued, though less often. Lena had become more than his guide. She was now a trusted friend. Their sessions had shifted from urgent survival to deeper conversations, purpose, fear, the shape of forgiveness. One afternoon, she gave him a folder. Inside was a recommendation for him to speak at a national conference on veterans' mental health. Eli read the letter 3 times before setting it down. I'm not an expert, he said. You're living it, Lena replied. He didn't answer, but he didn't say no. That weekend, he attended a memorial event for fallen soldiers. A group gathered at the riverbank, candles lit on driftwood boats, pushed gently into the water. He stood back at first, unsure. Then a boy, maybe 10, offered him a candle. You should send one too, he said. Eli nodded, took the candle, and whispered, for all of us who came back different. The flame flickered, steady against the dark. Afterward, he returned home, opened his journal, and wrote a letter, not to anyone else, to himself. Eli, you thought you were broken. You thought the war took you apart, but it didn't. It just scattered you. And now you're finding your way back, not to who you were, to someone new, someone honest, someone whole in the ways that matter. Keep going. He signed it with his full name. Not because he needed to remember who he was, but because now, finally, he was ready to claim it. Outside, the town moved slowly, shops closing, families settling in. Someone laughed on the street. A dog barked. The world didn't stop for anyone, but Eli didn't need it to. He took a deep breath, stepped out onto the balcony, and watched the last light fade. It was quiet, but not empty. And that made all the difference.